I can imagine that the success of Netflix's Stranger Things must have taken a lot of people in the TV industry by complete surprise, and yet the reasons for its success should be shit-blisteringly obvious. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it, you'll probably have a blast. While it's by no means perfect and by no means doing anything particularly new or groundbreaking, its success doesn't shock me at all as it's got a very broad appeal and it takes cues from some of the most universally loved sci-fi movies and TV shows ever made. A bunch of nerdy kids in a suburban town in 80s America, played by some shockingly good child actors. One of their number disappears one night, and the rest of them stumble across a mysterious girl called Eleven who has psychic powers, who escaped from a facility where the scientists are investigating a portal to another dimension that the little girl refers to as the Upside Down. And it's sort of like a twisted, dark mirror image of our world where it's always night. Essentially, it's a slightly more mature mashup of things like E.T., Close Encounters, any kind of parent loses child because of aliens/monsters thing. Nancy kinda reminds me of Nancy from the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It's also got some influence from real-life things like MKUltra and a bunch of real-life conspiracy theories. It taps into all manner of things already established in pop culture, and if you're a nerd like me, you'll probably be busy playing Spot the Cultural Reference Point throughout the duration. What I love about it is how it's taken pretty much every shiny object the internet's taken and run with over the last few years, psychic powers, conspiracies, monsters, and it's just sort of woven them together into a thoroughly entertaining narrative. As said, it's nothing original, even down to it being set in the 80s. But while Stranger Things may play like a mashup of loads of already existing media properties, the fact that it's an American TV show that's only 8 episodes long, the end of the series ties everything up really well, with only the fewest of nods and loose threads out there for a sequel, is really fucking weird. Essentially, it's an old-school sci-fi mystery serial. The story was a bit too big, and the creators wanted to cover how their plot affects a wide cast of characters, and you wouldn't be able to pull this off in just a movie. The pacing would be really shit. Stranger Things does work a lot on mood and atmosphere. But pitching this as a TV series would be difficult if it weren't for the fact that Netflix is an online service that plays by its own rules. Imagine how shit Stranger Things would have been if it was a US network television series that was required to pump out 22 episodes over the space of an entire year. If they had to fill airtime with a random episode about that time that Jonathan went to see The Clash in concert and it was like amazing and like a life-changing experience or something. Or Joyce Byers once had a friend who died and it was sad or whatever. The 8 episodes of Stranger Things we've got are so tight, so focused, waste no time, and in each of the 8 episodes, we cut really easily between our characters as the plot unfolds over the course of the episode, and as we do, we learn something about someone as they react to the escalating situation. It's got a really good flow going, so you're rarely, if ever, bored. Every scene in Stranger Things does something, everything feels necessary, which would not be possible if you had a network requiring you to pump out 22 episodes in order to fill slots in a broadcast schedule to keep the advertisers happy. Because Netflix isn't beholden to broadcasting structures and limitations, the art comes first. The story's given everything it needs in order to work as well as it does. Shows like Lost couldn't do that. While it did retain public interest for a while, it dragged out its mysteries, introduced new ones, never offered you explanations, and eventually people just got bored. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know I certainly did as I was sat watching the story of how Jack got his tattoo, wondering what in the holy name of fuck this has to do with anything. And so the series fizzles out as public interest dwindles, and you wind your way towards the disappointing conclusion, which will be disappointing after all that time and all that build-up. And that situation's just if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, as in the cases of shows you've totally forgotten about like Invasion, Flash Forward and millions of others, you'll start, people will like you, but are people going to stick around for 22 weeks? I mean, they're expected to by the broadcaster because they got slots to fill, but people probably won't stick around in the same numbers. And given the compromises the series has already had to make, they're even more likely not to, and if they do, it's a fucking miracle, so it'll probably end up getting cancelled. Thing is though, it wasn't as if sci-fi mystery serials stopped working or the demand for them vanished. The reasons for them vanishing are entirely to do with the internal workings of the industry. The parallel I can easily draw here is with the AAA games industry suddenly deciding in the last console generation that no one wanted to play horror games anymore. Horror games didn't dry up because there wasn't a demand for them, but because someone said they don't sell as well, they have a limited amount of playtime, and once finished, players trade them in, and we hate used games for some reason. The drought of horror games in the last console generation was to do with companies not wanting to make them. It had fuck all to do with what consumers actually wanted and reacted positively to, and if you leave that gap in the market that fucking wide, someone is inevitably gonna come along and make a massive success of it at some stage. The same is true with mystery serials. Because you're starting out of the gate with a limited lifespan, a show that makes more money than it costs to produce and has a fairly limitless lifespan, like say The Big Bang Theory, regardless of quality, is going to be a more attractive prospect to any production company working in commercial broadcasting, because this is just what happens when you have a system that's more beholden to the advertiser than the art itself. The show isn't so much made for the audience as it's made for the advertiser. Whereas if the relationship between viewer and broadcaster is more direct, you get a better experience. And that's what Stranger Things is. Each episode is called a chapter. It's like a chapter in a 300-page pulp sci-fi novel. You get invested in the characters, you get your scares, and as many have pointed out, the music in this thing is bloody marvellous. It's not too overbearing, it's very light, and it does a great job of providing mood and atmosphere. And because you can pick it up and finish it over the course of a weekend or two, it answers enough questions to keep you satisfied, but it leaves enough things open to get you thinking about it. And people are going to talk about that shit with everyone they know and on the internet to get other people talking about it. People are ostensibly gonna do the marketing for this shit themselves. And no one's gonna skip an episode because the series is too long and there are some filler episodes with nothing worthwhile happening in them. Everyone's on the same page and having a fucking blast while they're hyping themselves up for Series 2. Seriously, this is some fucking beautiful and totally obvious shit. Like, why the hell is it taking so long for something like this to happen? I'm probably more in love with Stranger Things as a business decision than the actual show. And that's not a slight on it. I love the show, I really do, and that soundtrack is really something. While it's a great show, as said, it's a solid, tight little bit of writing, and Winona Ryder is fucking amazing in it. The true joy of Stranger Things is what it represents, what it means for the TV industry as a whole, and where we go from here.